Okay, so this would be a feedback slash critique for the almighty god Phoenix, or bkphoenix. bkphoenix? Whichever. Okay. You've probably seen me before on the Discords, but in case you haven't, right? I go by Shazam on the Discords and some other shit and some other servers. I am by no means a Tekken professional. I'm just someone who enjoys Tekken, right? However, I believe, having played a lot of Paul, fighting a lot of Paul, watching a lot of Paul, watching a lot of Tekken, playing a lot of Tekken, I can offer some insights and some food for thought, right? And it is by no means gospel, right? I'm not trying to say that doing everything I say or even doing anything I say will suddenly make you into a Tekken God Omega Prime, right? However, I believe that there are areas of improvement that you can make, and that is stuff you should be considering, because I think during the matches, there's just a lot of stuff that I think you're getting away with that wouldn't work on not necessarily a better player, because I mean, this guy has Tekken God or whatever, he seems decently fine, like at a high rank, but a player that utilized movement a lot more than he did, right? And was a lot more consistent with his Paul punishes, right? Like when he ducked while standing 3-2 from you, he should have just launched you. Every time he should have been backdashing all those non-clean hit demo mans and then just blocking instead of eating the rest of the string or neutral guarding or whatever he was doing. And there just seems to be an overall just kind of like you use a lot of big Tekken moves and you're not using the small Tekken tools enough, right? And we'll go into what I mean by that. But, you know, just at the end of the day, all I'm trying to provide is some perspective, some sort of, hey, you know, consider looking into this and maybe see what works and what doesn't, right? Let's get started. So, like, this is tough, right? So, round start, you just kind of back off and here's the thing, right? You look like you're doing backsway there. Why would you do backsway when the opponent's just rushing at you at that range, right? Let's look at the range that he's rushing you at. He's already closed the distance. He's only at like range 2, right? The thing about it, if he was range 2 standing still, then sure, backsway would be fine. But if he's still advancing towards you, you need faster, more advancing keep out, right? You need a down forward 2, you needed jabs, you needed standing 3, maybe even down back 4, right? You have to play. I'm not sure what exactly was going on here. Maybe it was just kind of like, well, I think there you tried to step. But if the opponent's advancing towards you, you can't just let them get in for free like that, right? Now there are layers to it, right? Like at a certain point, an opponent can expect you and try to bait a whiff from you. And we're going to talk about whiff baiting a lot because I feel like that's something that's lacking in your game. But you have to make them second guess their approach like this. Them just like being able to run up and do a button on you, that's just not what you want to be allowing, right? And then right here, right, you're very passive in giving him some ground and letting him get some breathing room, which is like understandable. You don't have a lot of health to work with, right? But my question is this: knowing Sook, right, his back is very close to the wall, right? He's very likely to get a side hit. The angle this is at is not very favorable towards you. So why are you not doing sidestep left to try and reposition yourself and make sure that his back stays to the wall, right? This is something that I think is very lacking in your gameplay, where you don't take into account your positioning and where you're at the stage, right? This is very crucial for combos. This is very crucial for asserting your advantage, right? Yes, you have less health, right? However, this is Gigas. It's a big body fighting Paul, and their back is to the wall, right? The unscaled damage death fist combo is huge, enormous, right? But you're not going to get there if you just keep keep this positioning, right, where you're just kind of staying still, but you're not laterally moving, and then making sure that you have a better positioning at the wall to restrict the Gigas from moving around as much, or being afraid to whiff buttons, because then a stray whiff punish with back 1-2 can suddenly lead to a wall splat into a lot of damage, and then Oki afterwards, right? So there's a lot of factors at play here. Obviously, Tekken's a very complicated game. Your movement is clean, right? Your movement is clean. However, you're not using all of the aspects of the movement tool, right? You're using, think of movement as a multi-headed screwdriver, right? Sidestepping, backdashing, forward dash blocking, side walking, right? All of these are different heads on the screwdriver, and you're only using the first one, right? You're only using the regular movement, right? Maybe some dash blocking here and there, but you're not using the lateral move. You're not using the other aspects of it to try and pinpoint, like, okay, how can I unscrew my opponent's defense here? How can I make them weaken their defense and open up some opportunities for me, right? So add that to your gameplay. Focus more on trying to factor in stage positioning, and then readjusting yourself to give yourself a more advantageous position, right? It doesn't even have to be like a lot of them, right? Just a singular sidestep, then maybe poke a little bit, and then once it returns to neutral and you feel like you have some breathing room, do another sidestep to further get like a clean alignment from the wall. And then when you feel that you have the wall pressure in your favor, or the wall positioning in your favor, then start applying your pressure options, right? Forward 1+2, course to go back 4, all this stuff. Let's keep going. And then right here, obviously, unfortunate combo. But I liked the jabs. I liked using the jabs, and then the little, oh, I think you're gonna go for a swing now, down forward 2. I think that was solid. Good capitalization. I mean, you still got some damage. Right, okay, so another thing is like, okay, it could just be the replay, it could just be my perceptions, but it feels like your backsway is really slow. Right, like I should not be able to see Paul lean back as much as I am, right? Now, whether or not it's because you're trying to squeeze a little bit of evasion out of it, which is understandable, right? But I think one of the most powerful aspects of backsway is like, yeah, the evasion is nice, but the biggest powerful aspect, in my opinion, is that it's not basically like unreactable, right? The moment Paul dips, or just from standing, right, he can immediately do backsway 4, backsway 2, and the opponent has next to zero idea of what he's going to do, right? We're pretty close, if not firmly, in the realm of unreactable. But when you extend it a little bit, when you're trying to get some evasion here, but the opponent, like, one, I don't think you're really going to be evading Gigas jabs, because those things are massive, but that's a different story. You're just giving your opponent like a little bit of time, because that little bit of extra frames that where they see the backsway could be enough to make them duck. And maybe you catch them. Maybe you go, oh, I think you're gonna duck here, so I will do course will go back to, which is fine. But I think you're what's what I'm looking for? You're hampering the power of those tools, because they're just a little bit slower than they need to be, right? Whatever slight evasion boost you gain, you lose that on speed. So should you fuck up, and because it's only evasion, it's not actually a true crush, right? So if they just adjust their timing, right, or they just do a mid, and because you were slower with your input, now you're just losing when you might have been able to counter hit them depending on timing. I'm not saying you need to fully stop the trying to squeeze out a little bit of evasion of backsway, but I think you need to do a lot more with experimenting with your timing, because I felt like the timing on your backsway input was pretty much the same all throughout, and I think you could be doing a lot more by having a much tighter, faster backsway input to help vary up your timings, right? It's much harder for the opponent to get a read when you can delay it at any point, and then whenever they're like, oh, I think he's going to delay it, you immediately let it rip as fast as possible. So try to mess around with that a bit more. Gives him nice throw. Nice throw. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, right? So whatever Michael Moon was doing, or Iron Giant, I guess, He doesn't just. Your over reliance on Demoman is gonna get you killed, just straight up, right? If it's not a clean hit, the shit is useless, right? You being able to, because he wasn't holding back, or maybe he was neutral guarding, or maybe he was mashing, whatever the reason, you being able to get a full, like, non-clean hit string, Demoman string, I think it's a bad habit. Because all it takes is one person to just go, wow, you really like Demoman, I'm going to backdash once, mess up your clean hit, and then just hold back for the rest of the string. And then, heaven forbid, they have a consistent Demoman punish. And I'm pretty sure Gigas 1-2 will reach. I'd have to double check that, but the whole point about Gigas is that he just has 1-2 until he feels like launching you, right? So it's pretty fucking long range. Now, why is this really bad? There's just a lot, right? I'll point it out later, but you're risking death on block, if not just punishment on block, for 40-ish damage, assuming you clean hit, and then a big knockdown. And at the wall, this is fine. But again, in the open ground, right, look at here it works out, sure, right, whatever, because your opponent's not blocking. But you can be doing a lot more with this positioning, right? Like, with this positioning, you can just do simple sidestep 3, Corsical forward 3, Corsical back 4, etc. I don't know. Looking on it more, that particular instance wasn't exactly the worst, but this is going to be a running theme. Like, whenever there's an opportunity, or heaven forbid, like when you're under pressure and you're like, oh, I need to do something, you go for Demoman. And it's like, okay, I mean, if that's your playstyle, that's your playstyle, right? If that's what you want to do, go for it. No one's going to stop you. More power to you. But I think that's just probably the worst aspect of Paul is his Demoman, right? You have so many other tools that you can just safely throw out with much less risk and a comparable amount of reward without having to, it's just basically the best aspects of Paul is that he can just keep throwing out a bunch of moves with very minimal, if at all, risk to himself, right? And it's just something you have to start utilizing these tools more in order to get more familiar with them, because if you don't start using them, you're not going to know how to use them. You're not going to build up that necessary experience. Good low parry. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, right? Why the immediate backup, right? Your opponent is backing himself into the wall, and then you just kind of let him have some breathing room so he can start disengaging from the wall and getting better positioning. I'm not saying you have to rush in and, pressure him down, right? But you should have immediately done sidestep left and tried to make sure that his back stays to the wall, and then you can keep bullying him with your long range moves, right? Doing that's not an approach tool, right? That's just asking to get punished because this is fuzzyable, right? Whereas if you just sidestep left and you are still in an ideal range where tools like Corsical forward 3, Corsical back 4, Corsical back 2, because God, that move has way more range than I think it does all the time, right? Having those can really augment your pressure here. Just backing up and then being like, oh shit, I should approach, and then doing forward 2 strings, that's not going to help you. It's just straight up not. Now your back is to the wall, you're getting pressured, he's just poking you. And this is what I'm talking about right here, right? So, yeah, so he has a punish for this. Okay, you are under pressure from a lot of, like, fast... His down 3, how fast is Gigas down 3? I-16. Okay. I-16, jabs, I-10. At worst, he's got like -1 on hit, down 3, right? Why do you think Demoman would work there, right? Like, what was your reasoning behind there? And it's just something to consider, right? If your opponent is doing a lot of these jabs, right? Jab, jab, some mid into jab, 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 down three. That was a big one, sure, but that wasn't so, like, that wasn't a punish or anything. All you did was just, you chip him for a little bit, and then he gets, that's a lot of damage. What the hell? What the fuck is that move? He gets free chunky damage on you for no reason, right? Use your smaller tools. Jabs, down back 4. That's kind of it. If you need a panic tool, I mean, there is down 1+2 because of the evasion, right? But you have to become comfortable under pressure and knowing and getting a better sense of when to use a disruptive tool like jabs or down back 4, right? Once you use those tools and start utilizing that small frame advantage a lot more, right? Like, for example, +1 is not a lot of frame advantage. However, it is still positive frame advantage, meaning against slower opponents, or if you have a better understanding of their offense, you can easily set up a counter hit, you can easily continue your pressure, or just move out of the way, right? Same thing with down back 4. Yes, -2 means your turn is kind of over, like you're not really going to be pressing for much more offense. However, by down back 4 is high crush, super fast, and quick hit that can still allow for movement, meaning you can get yourself away from the wall and work on getting Iron Giant to the wall, right? Having a better positioning. And these are tools you need to be utilizing a lot more, right? Relying on Demo Man for whatever reason, maybe you're hoping for a brief moment where it's like, oh, he's not gonna do something. If I Demo Man here, he'll eat it. It's like, okay, or they just block and then they block the rest of the string. I'm not sure why you have this habit developed, but I'm just letting you know that, like, in the long run, this is going to get you killed more often than it's going to work out for you, right? At the very least, you have better methods of disrupting offense. More important, also, just movement, right? So, like, the moment... Well, so, like, the moment this was blocked, you could have stepped, right? And sidestepping is very critical for Paul, right? Like, you have the movement, but sidestepping can be just as, if not more important in some situations. I don't know if you could sidestep lift the knee move, but you should be able to try. At the very least, the moment you block the knee, right? I don't know if this goes into a string, though. No, I think he's just... Is that 1 or 2? I think he's just doing jab strings more. Like, at any of these points, right, recreate this situation and see where you could have stepped, either recreate it with your friend or in practice mode, but I feel like you could have easily stepped in that situation and given yourself better opportunity. Good low parry. You tried. Unfortunate. This is what I'm... Okay, so I think, like, right here, right? This is what I'm talking about. Like, I should not see the duck into Corsical 43, right? It should be immediate, as fast as possible. Here, I think you're doing it to gain a little bit more range, but I feel like just dash blocking a little bit more and then immediately doing it to have that consistent speed is more valuable and more important. You just don't... The longer you have a gap between your input and the move coming out, the slower it'll be, right? And it's just a risky game where I don't necessarily prefer, right? I think there's a difference between purposely extending the moves to increase a little bit range or get a little bit of evasion versus, oh, this is my default speed, right? So I think tightening up those inputs is going to be very valuable in the long run. How I think that's safe. I don't know. You'd have to... I got no... For matchup, for punishment stuff, you gotta look up a guide. Okay, that one I know... I mean, it's punishable, but, like, yeah, it's like, whatever. He blocked it. It is what it is. Unfortunate drop. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about, right? So you let the you're just really slow there, and he's able to just freely challenge you, right? I don't know. There's a okay. So okay, when Paul is in rage, right? Now the opponent's in a losing position, right? The moment he did this, he's in a losing position, possibly, because it's like, yeah, I mean, a full-on Rage Art combo isn't necessarily going to kill, but on Sook, it's very 100% going to get him to the wall, which is not a great place to be as Gigas against Paul, right? So at any point, should he have fucked up and eaten a counter hit, or you got like a solid down 4-2 whiff punish, or frame trap or something, right? He could have very likely died. And I think you should be using that to your advantage, like with your mental frame advantage, right? What exactly were you hoping to achieve by just letting rip the blue Death Fist here, right? He knows you have rage. He's gonna. I mean, I don't necessarily know this player, but typically players are gonna be immediately more defensive when they see, oh shit, Paul has rage, right? So with that, like, what was your reasoning behind the blue Death Fist? Why immediately challenge him and throw away your biggest trump card in Tekken, right? And also just, why not utilize the rage damage buff more, right? Start throwing out Corso Go Back 4, start throwing out your pressure tools, right? Corso Go Back 2, clean hit, 31 damage, bump it up to like almost 40 damage with rage, right? So I don't know. I felt like you could have utilized the rage a bit more with the mental frame advantage it offers before just letting it rip. And then, you relying on like slow input moves, and then you just get hit out of them. Nice. Unfortunate. I feel like this is a mid-high. I feel like that's a mid-high. Double check. But yeah. Not gonna speak too much on like punishment, right? You can do that with by yourself. Okay. So like right here when he stops pressuring you for some reason, like you block one thing and he suddenly starts backing off, and I'm not sure why he does that, right? But why not immediately start letting the Corso Go 4-3 rip? You're like, okay, I sense hesitation in my opponent. Let me start chunking in for some chip damage, right? And start whittling away his life. Why not? Why immediately back off, right? What exactly were you afraid of when he's the one giving up advantage? Rip. Okay, so what exactly were you hoping to achieve here? What does down 1-4 do for you here? If he was smarter, he'd realize if he was more knowledgeable in the Paul matchup, he'd realize you're -17 here, right? Even without it, right? Just what were you hoping to achieve with down 1-4? This is what I'm talking about, where I'm very hesitant with how you choose to use some moves, because you use a lot of moves that leave you in a very much committed position, right? What do I mean by that? The best thing in Tekken, in my opinion, is low commitment, high reward, right? Moves that have very little commitment, like such as pokes, jabs, Corso Go 4-3, Corso Go Back 4, or whatever, and then leave you in a decent enough position on hit or block or whatever. Right? What is down 1-4 doing for you here that was that necessary? Like, you got some advantage, but now you're just locked in place and Gigas gets to take his turn back, right? Versus just doing down 1, see what he does. If he presses buttons, then in the future you can maybe go for the string, right? Or just using down 1 to like lock him in place, and then once he's locked in place, start doing some Corso Go 4-3 or Corso Go Back 2 and other linear moves or something, right? Corsica 4-3 isn't linear, but you know what I mean, right? I don't think you should be using the string like at all, right? Even in like round closing situations, I feel like it's such a huge risk that I just don't think it's worth it. But I don't know. I still use it as round closing, but whatever. That's a decision I make and live with, right? If you would like to be more than happy to, right? Be my guest. I just don't think, hey, let me do this low that it does like okay damage. That looks like a lot of damage, but it leads you minus 17 on hit, and then you just kind of do fuck all, right? Paul is great because he's always safe, right? Sure, but he doesn't get plus frames a lot, right? But he has a lot of moves that it's like, okay, well, they're not exactly plus frames, but this is still pretty solid. For example, Corsica forward 3, right? There's no plus frames there. It has a very strong counter hit, which in this matchup is going to be tricky. But it's basically a button that says, hey, here's 17 free points of damage, and also you're neutral, right? So the opponent can't really do anything outside of like, oh, I'm just going to start jabbing more, right? The point being, you can still achieve a decent reward of 17 damage, but put yourself in a much favorable position because now you're neutral, so then you can incorporate movement and again start focusing on developing your positioning to be more advantageous than it currently is, right? I don't know, just stuff to think about. Again, what exactly were you hoping to achieve here? Rip. And this is where the sort of inconsistent inputs will end up, right? Like you were going for a whiff punish, but you were a little bit too slow. Maybe it's because you messed up the whiff punish. It is what it is, but sorry, I don't think I got enough sleep last night. Alright, let's watch the second match. Or let's not watch. Okay, thank you, YouTube. Oh my god, how many rounds do you have on this guy? Does he? Yeah, nice. You see what I'm saying, right? Like, okay, what exactly were you hoping to achieve here, right? He just has to walk back. He doesn't even backdash. He just walks back, and then he gets you essentially hand him like 17 damage, maybe 20 for free, right? When this could have been, you know, forward 1 plus 2, Corsica back 4, Corsica back 2, Corsica forward 3, any of your other like pressure options, right? Like you had a lot of options available to you. He doesn't block for some reason. Okay, so again, this is what I'm talking about. Why the immediate Corsica back 3 string? What exactly were you hoping to achieve? I mean, you did a 50-50, but it's like, unless he pressed into that option, which he's not gonna do because you have rage, right? You were dead anyway, or basically, I think Corsica back 3 should have been the last thing from your mind. You could have easily done a lot of just keep pressuring with Corsica back 4, dash blocking, and then getting some good spacing in, and then trying to keep a good distance for when you can maybe get a whiff punishment out of him, right? There is no reason to constantly put yourself in these weird disadvantageous situations, right? You know, using Corsica back 3 when you don't really need to and you have a lot of other options available to you. This is what I'm talking about, right? There are just better options for you to be doing stuff here. Or at the very least, options that can set up way better than Corsica back 3 can, right? Okay. If you were trying to force a mistake out of the opponent, what do you think is going to... What do you think is going to achieve more, right? Corsica back 4, where you can just keep pressing it, maintain the advantage, and then just kind of keep positioning and keep poking, right? Or the canned Corsica back 3 string, where after they block the first hit, they just stand block the rest, and there is no mix-up, right? Congratulations, you're safe, except it's Gigas, and I'm pretty sure he can reliably punish the high option because the high is still -10, right? The pushback is not going to save you against Gigas 1-2. And, of course, the mid, he'll just kill you, right? So, but you see what I'm saying, right? Corsica back 4, Corsica back 2, Corsica forward 3, any of those options, a lot less commitment, a lot less opportunity for your opponent to counterplay you, versus this string, which is a lot of commitment and forces you just kind of like take it, right? If you stop at the mid, you're dead. If you do the high, you're dead. If you do the mid, you're dead, right? The final parts of the string. And that's just like a theme throughout your gameplay. Is like oftentimes when you have an opportunity to start pressure or start your turn, you'll go for like these big Hail Mary swings or something, and I think you're not doing enough to build up conditioning or momentum on your opponent, right? You're just kind of like, all right, let me just apply pressure and kind of high roll them, and it's not sustainable, right? Because you're not only is the risk reward skewed against you, right? It's also just kind of like it goes back into the theme of why would you commit so much when you don't have to, right? Nice. Oh, unfortunate. Good block. Maybe a little bit too slow. Okay, so like right here, right? Just he's super far away from you. You need to start moving and start disaligning from the wall because you're not in a great place. And if he starts running at you, then you can start doing keep out tools. But just kind of standing there and then letting him run in is just not going to work out in anybody's favor, right? Just food for thought. Thought that would hit. Wait, was that 1-2? Okay, yeah, that's a launch. Practice that in practice mode if you run into Gigas a lot, because I think down forward 2 will whiff, so you'd have to do something like shredders or something, but it's whatever. That's unfortunate. I thought you would have hit. Nice. Good block. Alright. Building up some momentum. Where does it go wrong? He just doesn't block that ever. Nice. So like at any, I'll talk about it later, but okay. Alright, so I'm just gonna do the roundup. I felt like I've expanded on the main points I want to make here. Alright. Punishment or neutral, punishment slash matchup knowledge, combo slash Oki, personal opinion stuff. Neutral. You're too commitment heavy in your neutral. You just use a lot of big power moves and hoping they work out, and it's not like I'm not feeling like there's a game plan here, right? What is your goal? What are you trying to achieve against Gigas, against Iron Giant here? Are you trying to get him to the wall? Okay, so then why are you backdashing all the way there, right? Are you trying, obviously you're trying to win, right? But you have to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to win? What exactly am I going to win with? Is it pokes? Is it counter hits? Is it wall pressure, right? There's lots of ways for Paul to win the game. There's lots of ways for any character to win the game. But you have to start you have to start developing a game plan around what are your strongest options, right? For Paul, it's going to be playing like this turtley game and then just throwing out his counter hit tools, and then more importantly, throwing out a lot of his pokes, especially Corsical forward 3, and just start chipping down the opponent, right? I can start ranting about chip damage all day, but just use Corsical forward 3 more, right? Experiment more with your, I'll talk about that in punishment slash match knowledge, but neutral. And then your approach, right? Experiment with your approach. Dash blocking is your friend. Corsical forward 3 is your friend. Baiting whiffs is your friend, right? A lot of stuff I felt like you could have just backdashed a little bit more on the approach. Not the way you were doing, but like rush forward to make the opponent think you're going to press something and then just hold back to mess up, like bait something out of them. If they don't do anything, then that's fine. You can continue your pressure, but you have to keep that, even if you don't hit them, even if they don't block anything, that leaves you in a good spot. If literally all you do is move forward and then hold back and the opponent doesn't do anything, that's still fine because you're able to close the distance and then give your other tools a better chance of not whiffing, right? Because when we whiff as Paul, we might as well be as good as dead. So experiment more with less commitment options and experiment more with how do you approach an opponent, right? And then think about it like, okay, in this point in time, how do I win? What am I going to do, right? Is that going to be forcing block punishment, right? Like right there you had a really good duck and now you're just dying, but right? Is that going to be, wow, my opponent's stepping a lot, let me do a bunch of my homing and tracking moves to discourage him from stepping? Or wow, my opponent just does not press buttons, let me get a lot of pressure going with down forward 1 backswing mix-ups, right? Stuff like that. Stuff to consider, right? I feel like you're just kind of like waiting for something to happen, but Paul, okay, so there's a difference between defensive and then passive, right? Paul, you want to be defensive, but you can be a defensive player while still trying to, initiate a response out of your opponent. Sometimes it's just going to be chip damage. Sometimes it's just going to be, I'm just going to keep pressing these buttons and you'll eventually get frustrated and try to lash out and then I'll be ready with a punish, right? Stuff like that, right? But just sort of backdashing, letting your opponent approach you to close the distance, and then losing out on any advantages you had from your positioning on stage isn't the play. It just is not. It's just not something you want to be doing. Punishment slash matchup knowledge. On punishment, you need to experiment more with your fast options. They are not punishes, right? They're not something that's going to immediately save you from whatever mix-up or whatever situation you're blocking. But the goal of them is to create disruption. You want to disrupt your opponent, constantly disrupt them, so that way you can figure out like, okay, if I disrupt them here, right, then I can do something else. I can maybe start moving around, I can start repositioning, I can then, if I get like a jab, I can do counter hit in a plus, or plus frames into a counter hit or something, right, and make him stop doing offense, so then I get some breathing room, right? Relying on Demo Man when you don't have a good sense of your opponent's timing is just going to get you killed more often than anything. Combos slash Oki. I feel like your combo awareness needs to be worked on a little bit, just kind of like some unfortunate drops, but that just comes with practice. There's not really much to be said there. Just keep chipping away at it, you'll get there. Personal opinion stuff. options that I think are neat, but your mileage may vary, right? Use more down forward 1 for pressure and mix-ups, right? Down forward 1 is also a very powerful information gaining tool. When you do down forward 1 backsway, how does the opponent react? Do they immediately try to jab you? Do they immediately try to move around? Do they just kind of hold it, right? If they immediately try to jab you, then you know, okay, I can do down forward 1 backsway 3 and then maybe counter hit them into something. If they try to move, you're like, okay, I can do down forward 1 backsway 4. That'll lock them down there, right? If they don't do anything, you're like, oh, sweet, the keys to the kingdom, baby. I can do down forward 1, cancel it into sidestep, into forward 1 plus 2, into sidestep 3. Lots of options here, and all of those options are a lot less committal than relying on the core circle back 3 string, relying on down 1 4, or any of these other big options that are just kind of like, right? Other options that I think are neat. I talked a lot about them already, right? Just jabs, down back 4, smaller Tekken tools, and try to focus more on learning how and when to disrupt your opponent, so that way you can focus on repositioning or whatever else, right? Really need to be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Be able to go in with a coherent game plan of like, this is my winning image, this is what I'm going to do to win the game, and then constantly adjusting and altering your game plan based on the information you gain from your opponent. You can't just go, I'm just going to press my high reward tools, right? Or these things that have worked in the past. You have to go, what is my opponent doing? What do I have that counters whatever they're doing? Work on that, right? Until you can either slow down the pace of the match so that you can start applying pressure, or it forces them to change up their tactics, so you can they'll do something more risky, or they'll do something safer but it's not as scary, so that way you can get some breathing room and focus on maintaining your advantage, right? Anyway, yeah, so I just rambled a lot. Stream of consciousness, my bad. I'm trying to reduce the length of these, but it's whatever. Anyway, now my question to you: did anything I say make sense? Right? Was there anything helpful in here? Right? If it helped, I'm happy. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. If anything didn't make sense, you're like, hey, I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about in this point or that point. Let me know, right? So the Discord's for. Feel free to ask questions, gain some insight, and yeah, that'll be it for me. All right, man. Have a good one.